No, Dungeons & Dragons is not dying, nor is it disappearing from bookstores.
That just makes no sense. I mean, it's just bull.
Before we explain why some people are losing their minds over D&D's latest move, just a quick reminder to hit those like and subscribe buttons, mainly because we want to see if YouTube has implemented that feature where those buttons really do glow now. Neat. Now, a couple weeks ago, the character sheet reported that Wizards of the Coast was no longer using Penguin Random House as their retail distributor of Dungeons & Dragons books. Since then, various tabletop RPG-focused YouTube pages have latched on to this story to make various claims, such as that D&D is abandoning bookstores, or that this is a disastrous business decision, or they're engaging in even more extreme speculation, such as D&D is abandoning physical books, or even that Wizards of the Coast is dying. Friends, we've been covering Dungeons & Dragons extensively over the past year, and I have been covering Dungeons & Dragons and the business of Dungeons & Dragons for a half decade now. The character sheet has covered actual D&D stories such as the OGL and the Pinkerton insanity that has, been real stains on the Dungeons & Dragons brand. So, trust us when we say that this isn't a D&D disaster of any kind, or even the end of D&D as we know it.
Explain yourself.
So, let's lay out the facts here. Back in September, Wizards of the Coast announced that it was ending its distribution deal with Penguin Random House, which provided them with a valuable distribution line to traditional booksellers and big box retail stores. This distribution deal ending will have very little to no impact on game stores, as Wizards will continue to use game distributors to get their rulebooks into stores. Now, some game stores are probably going to be annoyed because they preferred Penguin Random House over those game distributors due to return policies or sales margins and stuff like that, but this is at best an inconvenience to those stores who have to switch distributors. What this deal does affect is how Dungeons & Dragons will get into traditional booksellers and retailers like Barnes & Nobles and Target and Walmart. Right now, buyers for those companies do use Penguin Random House to order D&D rulebooks for their retail locations. However, that's exactly why Hasbro ended their D&D distribution deal with Penguin Random House. Hasbro wants better placement for D&D in places like Target and Barnes & Noble, and it can use the distributors and relationships Hasbro already has with those companies to do that. Let's keep in mind, all of those companies I just named, they have big accounts with Hasbro, in addition to having accounts with Penguin Random House, and Hasbro just decided that they should just do it themselves. This means big bookstores and big box stores will just order their D&D rulebooks directly from Hasbro instead of through Penguin Random House. And if anything, there could be more rulebooks in these stores in better, more visible locations because of the deal. Because Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro are just cutting out the middleman. The fears that D&D books would just vanish because of this deal are completely unfounded and seem to be based on a very early and very bad misunderstanding of the entire announcement. Hasbro isn't trying to kill D&D, they literally are trying to sell more books in big box retailers. At best, you'll see D&D books in a different place. They aren't pivoting D&D away from physical media. They literally want their toy account representatives to buy space in places like Target and Walmart so that there are entire shelves of D&D books next to Pokemon toys and WWE action figures.
The cream will rise to the top, oh yeah.
Now, what this could impact is D&D in smaller bookstores, companies that don't have access to those game distributors that we were talking about a little while earlier and would have no reason to have a real Hasbro sales account. If you buy your D&D books from a local bookstore, first and foremost, good for you. But even then, it would just take those small local bookstores a matter of days to set up a Hasbro account and be back in action, so you might not even notice the difference. The reality is, D&D had a great quarter. Sales are up for D&D, Wizards of the Coast is doing great as well. Lord of the Rings is probably going to be the best-selling Magic the Gathering set in history, which is kind of hilarious considering that, it has nothing to do with Magic the Gathering in terms of the lore or anything like that, but everyone loves Lord of the Rings. Baldur's Gate 3, that's a game that's in Game of the Year contention. And, let's not forget that Chris Cox, the CEO of Hasbro, he knows full well just how valuable the D&D brand can be. Even if the brand has had a tough year because of, the whole OGL stuff and a movie that didn't perform as well as they wanted. Now, don't take this as some kind of defense of Wizards of the Coast. If you want to bag on Wizards, bag on Wizards. But please, 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 please make sure that you pay attention to what the company is actually doing and what those moves mean for the game and, more importantly, for the rest of the tabletop industry. D&D cutting ties with Penguin Random House in terms of how they use Penguin Random House to get their books into bookstores doesn't mean that D&D is going all digital. We pay much closer attention to what D&D does with, D&D Beyond. That is going to be your key to see if D&D would ever pivot away from digital. And by the way, spoiler alert, they're never going to go fully away from physical books. They may want digital to be the version of the books that sell the most, but they will never go away from physical books altogether. Anyways, like and subscribe to the Character Sheet. We'll continue to shoot it straight down the middle and report the news.